What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. Joining me once again, Jimmy Watkins. Jimmy, how are you doing, my friend? How are things looking for the Browns this weekend? I love giving the Cavs fans and Browns fans that listen to this podcast a little bit of insight from you heading into each podcast about the week ahead, especially with game day right around the corner.
Two ways you could look at this week. They're playing the Giants. The Giants are terrible. Brian Dable, the Giants coach, is already staring down reporters in press conferences for asking about his job security. So that's how you know it's going really well 2 weeks into the season. Should be an easy win. So vibes should be really high in the Muni lot and the surrounding areas, tailgate areas, downtown Cleveland. The flip side is it can kind of only go down from there. Like if the Browns lose to the Giants, we are right back to the sky is falling again, like we were after week 1 against Dallas. So I guess we'll see.
Always a we'll see, man. It reminds me of J.D. Bickerstaff during the playoffs last year with all the injuries that were going on. He had his staple answer to the question that Chris would start every press conference with, we'll see, depending on who was injured on that particular day and whether or not they would come back. But we're looking ahead to this next season, Jimmy, talking more about the 2024-2025 team. We are airing this on Thursday. We are recording it on Wednesday. And late last night, the City Edition jerseys were leaked. And we all know that this happens almost every season since the in-season tournament has begun, with the tournament kind of setup being leaked, the jerseys being leaked, the potential arenas being leaked, all these different things throughout the process as we kind of get used to this new in-season tournament, which is supposedly going to drive up numbers and participation throughout the regular season, limit injury management or load management, as we call it, and then also trying to figure out if teams and players care about the regular season and how it's going to impact their ticket numbers and all these different things throughout the season. I believe the Lakers won last year and hung up a banner for it. So some teams are taking it seriously. Jimmy, what do you think about the in-season tournament as a whole before we get into the other stuff around it?
Sorry, NBA. Why am I supposed to care about the in-season tournament? Like, the concept of the in-season tournament, I like the idea. I like the idea of giving players something more to play for earlier in the season, raising the intensity of these games. I don't like the idea that we have to do that, right? Like the idea that we all, there's already a very large contingent of certainly casual NBA fans, but even those who watch the game closest know that there are just certain nights where you're not getting the best out of the players that are on the court that night. It's a long season. Sometimes you gotta load manage. Sometimes, as LeBron James used to do with the Cavs, you gotta rest in game. Brian Wojnarowski from ESPN actually wrote a story about this, using like the fancy tracking cameras that they have in the arenas, tracking how fast LeBron wasn't moving during games, during like that second Cavs run where they were just waltzing to the finals through the East every year during the regular season. And it was kind of just eye-opening. Like, this is maybe the best athlete we've ever seen, and this guy's moving at like one of the slowest paces in the NBA. So I think that's a turnoff for a lot of people about the NBA, particularly about the regular season. This idea that the playoffs are a different animal is fun, and that exists in other sports like baseball and hockey. But in baseball and hockey, I think the fans still think that the players are giving it their all during the regular season. And in the NBA, certainly fans don't believe that. And I think they have reason to. I think the defensive effort waxes and wanes. I think you get more careless turnovers. You get weirder shot selection sometimes in the regular season. And it's a bad look for the NBA to say, okay, here's more money. You guys we're already making jokes about how some of the best football players and hockey players. There was something floating around on Twitter the other day, like Sidney Crosby's number 87 for the Pittsburgh Penguins, all-time great hockey player. So he's always wanted to have an $8.7 million cap hit. He's one of the greatest hockey players of all time. That's the joke on Twitter was, oh, that's George Niang money. One of the greatest hockey players of all time is making the same money approximately as the Cavs. What do we want to call it, George Niang? Eighth man, ninth man during certain portions of the playoffs, 13th man, like whatever. You know what I mean? So it's just a bad luck for the NBA to come in and say, oh, here's more money to play hard, which is kind of already your job, and you already get paid really well for it. And because they already get paid really well for it, how incentivized are they really to play that much harder? Like, we saw, like, the Lakers first of all didn't want to hang an in-season tournament banner last year because they're a proud franchise, and they're like, no, real championships count. The NBA kind of made them. So they're like, okay, fine, here's a banner. People clown them for it because, again, what are we playing for? Money. Who cares? I would be way more into the in-season tournament, like if it guaranteed a playoff spot or, bumped your draft pick up about 10 slots. There's certainly potential complications with that. What does a team that's guaranteed the playoffs do with the regular season after the in-season tournament? I'll hear the argument. I don't know. I would think they would still fight for seeding, but regardless. And then would players compete for, if you're a ninth man, are you really trying to – if we're playing for a draft pick, are you really trying to, play for the guy who potentially could take your spot next year? Definitely a fair question to ask. Another fair question to ask is why do I care about the NBA in-season tournament? The answer is right now we're giving the players more monies and the courts are fun. Like we threw a bunch of paint on the courts. Like, okay, I guess this is it's like we're doing like the Nickelodeon Thanksgiving broadcast for the NBA. You know how NFL has like SpongeBob and Patrick calling the games on Thanksgiving, and they do like a slime on TV every time someone scores a touchdown. It feels like that's what we're doing with the NBA. It feels ridiculous, and it feels like the idea needs a little bit of a makeover to me. I do think that the NBA is eventually going to make this tournament actually worth something, because as it stands, I do think the players played harder last year. Kudos to you guys for doing the thing you already get paid to do. But I still think that like fans are it's just hard for fans to care. Like they're trying to do this European soccer model, just create a second championship. And it's like, that's not really how this works. You need to have it mean something. Right now, you just like what happens. What's different about the Lakers season last year? They were a 7 seed who got smoked in the first round by Denver. Does the NBA in-season tournament color that season differently either way? No, you got smoked in the first round either way. Like, you wasted another season of LeBron. Congratulations. Like, that's a footnote in Lakers history in LeBron's career. Like, I don't think the Lakers feel any better about last season as a result of that. So, as you can tell, I am very passionate about this topic. I think the in-season tournament is very lame. Could be very cool, but is very lame and sends a bad message to fans.
I believe it was the Miami Heat players who said that if they won the in-season tournament, they would make the banner into a rug rather than into something that they hang from the rafters in their arena. I mean,
Josh Hart said something along the lines of like, yeah, we're playing for an extra watch or something like that.
Right. I mean, sure. I get what you're saying, Jimmy, and I agree with you when it comes to the fact that there is no true incentive other than an extra paycheck for these guys. And I agree with you in the fact that a playoff spot, at least a play-in spot, something, or even a draft stock increase could potentially make this more valuable. But here's why the Cavs may actually care about the in-season tournament this season, because of who is in their grouping, right? So in the group, which is East Group C, it's comprised of the Boston Celtics, Chicago Bulls, Atlanta Hawks, and Washington Wizards. Most of the fans or listeners are probably like, oh my God, why do I care about the Bulls, Wizards, and whoever else. Well, the one name that you all know that they care about is the Boston Celtics. And Donovan Mitchell and players around the league had mentioned last season about how the in-season tournament did make them play harder, did make them play with a little bit more grit, determination, or whatever you want to call it. Jimmy, you want to hop in here?
I'm sorry, I'm just really distracted because Woj just retired from ESPN to become the general manager of St. Bonaventure's basketball.
What?
So that's the school that he went to. So Woj is literally, he's like, okay, I'm done breaking news. I'm going to go recruit now. What? That is insane. I respect the hustle. I think a lot of us in the media, I'm sorry, we were about to have a very layered discussion about the Cavs and Celtics. But real quick, I do think a lot of us in the media want to be shadow GMs. We'll say publicly oh yeah, I could never do that. But a lot of us really do think we're on the trade machine. I don't know. I think I could hop on a plane and check out some scouting trips and swing some trades, throw some first round picks around. Woj just out here doing it, and I respect it. I respect the pride in his school. If Ohio University came to me tomorrow and said, "Hey, come be the guy who rubs elbows with our NIL collective and helps us acquire transfer portal talent," I'd be like, where can I sign? That just sounds like a great life. And I would love to do that for my guy, Jeff Bowles. But yeah, we're going to be sidetracked for a little bit because this is insane. Now there's also, I guess you could argue Shams bullied Woj out of news breaking. Good for him. This is a huge win for Shams. I don't know what conference St. Bonaventure's is in, but I'd be concerned about the other teams in that conference because Woj is a grinder.
Dude, I mean, this is huge for the industry as it is, right? This is one of the, I know every reporter, especially in the NBA, has Woj's tweets, with notifications on, and you're looking, obviously you have some other people around the world as well, but, this is the main dude. This is who you turn to, who you look at, and this is not me, trying to hype him up or nothing. This is earned. He's done the immense amount of work, and that's exactly what I thought, Jimmy, when you talked about Shams, however you pronounce his name. I need to learn it at some point, but in that competition, he's our age. He's 27, 28 or whatever, and hold on, let me confirm that because
he's young. He's around our age. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he is young.
Yeah, he's 30. He's 30.
Yeah,
born in 1994, right? So he's not that much older than you or I, and I really think that was a competition that one, I thought it was giving Woj a purpose again. He was competing. Could you read this message that he wrote out? He said, "There's no thrill of it anymore. There's no real drive because it's tireless work." The dude, you look at what during the trade deadline, during contract season, during the off season, during the NBA draft, when they're literally giving out the names before they're announced on the TV, the amount of time and effort that they're putting in it cannot go overstated. You look at some of their time on their phones, there's been times where I've seen 19 to 20 hours for some of these guys, and it's just ridiculous. But Jimmy, that's a hit for all of us trying to figure out I mean, he's gonna go be a recruiter or whatever, but that that also reminds me of us playing 2K or college football or Madden or whatever, and literally being a GM and how much fun and how much stock we put into that for some people. Some people make that their livelihood. They'll get they'll get the visor with the headset, and they'll have the jersey on or the polo on with the emblem of the school, and literally be acting like they're the GM or the coach of the team. And it's now Woj gets to go live that life for real. And I mean, that is not something I had on my bingo card for the before the 2024-2025 season.
It's really interesting because, to your point, Ethan, news breaking. I wish Chris was here. Chris could speak to this so much better than us. But news breaking is such a grind. Like, it's not just the time spent on your phone. It's the idea that your time is never your own. Like, you always at the drop of a hat have to be ready to move and not only take a phone call, make 3 more, write something, go on TV, do a hit, something like that. And I've read, like, there's been a couple of feature stories on Shams in particular where, like, he's admitted to, like, he gave up playing pickup basketball, like one of the few hobbies he actually had, because he was always terrified about missing a call because of the competition between him and Woj. And even, like, people like Chris Haynes is still out here doing it, killing it. Mark Stein's still out here killing it. Shout out to both of them. But, like, you give up a lot of your life. Now, the interesting thing is, so do college basketball coaches. So do people who recruit. Like, recruiting, there are dead periods where you literally aren't allowed to talk to the players. Beyond that, you are always on a plane. You are always on the phone with somebody. You are always in an empty, small gym somewhere across the country. So, like, Woj clearly still has the energy to grind. It's just he's choosing to redistribute. I don't know. I'm not great with words today. That energy in a really different way. So again, that's really interesting to me. Like, he kind of, it sounds like he lost his love of the game here. He wants to stay in basketball, but he kind of lost his love of the news breaking game. But man, I really hope he's doing this because he really wants to do it, because there are a lot of college basketball coaches, like basketball lifers, people I know, I've covered college basketball, that are fulfilling a lifelong dream by working in basketball and getting paid well to do it, but are miserable. Recruiting makes people miserable.
I mean, the last portion of this this little post that he made says, after all these years reporting on everyone's teams, I'm headed back to my own. So, like, that's a bar. First of all, that's a bar.
Tell him, Woj.
That's a bar, first of all. But, like,
get him an ad lib. Get Woj an ad lib.
I'm trying to figure out, where did you see that he was, like, specifically going back to his school and doing all that stuff?
All over the internet. Schefter's tweeting. There's an ESPN story about it.
Oh, God.
There is. Schefter's tweeting. Schefter's sent like 4 tweets about this already.
Oh, yeah. Pete Thamel just tweeted it, too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I see it.
It's an ESPN story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who wrote this ESPN story? Who breaks the news about Woj? This is what I want.
Jeff Passan and Adam Schefter apparently are the bylines in here. Hold on.
All right.
Yeah. Pete Thamel, Jeff Passan, and Adam Schefter are the bylines. Like, the 3 biggest people that aren't Woj. Bro, that's crazy.
This opens up a huge hole in ESPN's NBA coverage. I mean, we're getting a little bit into the media weeds now, but, like, Woj was on every show. He was basically, I don't want to say running, but ESPN didn't make NBA coverage decisions without consulting this guy. So I wonder how their vision changes. I wonder who's going to fill the Woj shoes over there. There's, like, this will change your day-to-day life as an NBA consumer in some way. There will be a new, I mean, like, Chris Haynes or Mark Stein could slide right in there. I would not be surprised at all about that.
Yeah,
would not at all be surprised about that.
Oh, because Chris Haynes' contract with TNT just finished. And I think he's supposed to be a free agent right now.
There you go.
Hold on.
We might be cooking right now.
That's crazy because I mean, first of all, shout out to Chris Haynes. He's a former cleveland.comer. But, like, he was one of the big dogs before Chris, while Chris was kind of in my shoes back then. He was like a second or third guy on the beat, and Chris Haynes and Joe Varden were running the thing. So, I mean, that's dope. But I'm trying
Cleveland.com coaching tree is pretty legit.
Yeah, bro. Brian, like, everybody's going to ESPN from Cleveland.com. You said Brian Winters? Like,
lay the path. Lay the path, boys.
My goodness. Like, because I'm trying to figure out, like, where his last link was. But I don't see a link. I just see him, like, Chris Haynes just tweeting information. There's no stories or anything that you can link to. So basically, this summer he's been relaxing, getting his shots up, and then waiting for Woj to retire. So wow, this might be the hottest take we've had on this podcast that has nothing to do with the Cavs. Oh my god, like that just makes.
But it
so
does
much
it does
sense.
have to do with the Cavs, though, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's about how you get your Cavs news. It's about how you learn about the biggest, like RIP Woj bombs, live forever Chris missiles. But like if it's not Fedor, if Chris is not breaking the news, it's probably Woj. And by the way, even if Woj is breaking the news, Chris is probably a few seconds behind him. If Chris is breaking the news, Woj was probably a few seconds behind him. I mean, I guess, Shams will be breaking a lot now too. But I wonder, like, is there also like Chris Haynes? Let's say it's Chris Haynes, whoever goes to the ESPN. Do you like? I feel like you get a little bit more of a clout bounce with the 4 letters behind your name, and maybe it's easier to get through doors. Not that Chris Haynes had any trouble getting through any door before, but like, I just feel like once you land there, you're stamped, and now your range of contacts is unlimited.
I mean, I feel like they've been doing it so long that their range of contacts are already mad long, right? I mean, Chris Fedor, our guy Chris Fedor, is literally like, he is the Cavs like news cycle at this point.
Hey, Chris has been on a lengthy vacation right now. It's not crazy that he could have squeezed in an ESPN interview during this time.
You just go up and leave. I mean, but that was the next point that I was gonna make, right? Because we've talked about how it's daunting for like these like national TV reporters or national media reporters or whatever. Obviously, the beat job itself is a grind, right? Baseball, basketball, football. Football, you're on the road 16 weeks. Basketball, 82 games in a season. Baseball, 162 games, right? There are more than like I can count of beat reporters who turn into columnists or something else because they simply do not have the time or the effort to put into being a full-time beat reporter because of the things that Jimmy mentioned earlier, right? Like, you have to be on your phone. I remember, like, in my first year on the beat, I was getting calls while I was in the middle of a softball game, right? Like, I'm on the sideline trying to figure out what do I like when the news about Isaac Okoro broke. I'm literally at the restaurant trying to have a regular meal on a Sunday, watch some football or whatever. And as soon as my food comes out to me, I get a text, Isaac Okoro. And I'm like, all right, can I get my bill? I gotta go. Because like that, it's the quickness of it. And the going from a beat reporter to a columnist can open up, like, one, you already have the connections around the world and around the league, so you can just reach out to people, set up interviews and all those different things easier than when you were like me, a youngin in this game. But it's also the time and management and all those different things. Also, if you're trying to start a family, like, this is a hard business to do that, right? Because you are literally on call. You're on the road. I know Chris is the most things that I bet Chris has done on his vacation is hang out with his son, right? And his wife. Because, like, you love them, but for the next 82 games, especially when he's on the road on a 3-game trip, like, especially when he's out west, yada, 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 you're not going to be able to have the time to do all those things. You got FaceTime, which is a great new addition to what we have on our phones, obviously the internet and things like that. But, like, that's hard. It's hard on relationships. I've heard many relationships fail because of that.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough game, man. One more thing I do want to say about Woj. Well, I mean, this is huge news for a lot of different reasons, and he's a great newsmaker, and that's how people will remember him, is for the tweet notifications, the Woj bombs, so on and so forth. He was a great freaking journalist, man. Like, he basically revolutionized reporting and the way, like, he basically created this job. Him, Schefter, the Jeff Passons, Shams, Chris Haynes, Mark Stein, like, insider wasn't always really a job. Like, his sole job is give me information before other people learn it. It's a really hard thing to do in this business, particularly now. and he did it. But before that, he was a great columnist. Oh man, that guy had bars. He could write. He could really write. He's a great beat reporter. He really worked every rung of the ladder on his way up. So I have the utmost respect for that dude. And I wish him luck in the NIL transfer portal world. I wish him peace of mind. Again, can't stress that enough. That's going to be a hectic life. He's trading one hectic life for another.
So another question that, I mean, obviously all of my sports group chats and all of my like reporter friends group chats is also blowing up at this very moment. And they're asking, does Shams get hired by ESPN and take over Woj's role? Because I think his contract just ended too. So I mean, it's like, who would you rather want in this situation? Man, I didn't realize. I think I didn't realize that Sham's contract ended too. I think like recently, but I just like this is like such weird timing, and I don't know if I mean Woj doesn't seem like a cynical or like a guy that holds grudges like that, but like to hire the guy who's been competing with for the last however long.
I mean, now that he's out of the game, I don't think he would care about that. I mean, like, Woj definitely has held a grudge or two in his day. I think it's even colored his reporting a little bit at times. But yeah, this is his moment in the sun. I don't think he cares. Honestly, if you're getting out of the game, you can't then say, well, no, don't hire my rival / protege. You can't do that. No, go find some diamonds in the rough. This is no longer your world. Go get St. Bonaventure as a point guard.
Man, go get St. I mean, like, I just think this whole situation like kind of sheds light on the news game, right? Because nobody else knew this was coming. Nobody else had any like, and it all happened in breaking news. And we're looking at all the different people that we have on Post Notify on Twitter or Instagram, trying to figure out the in depth of the stories, right? And you talked about our guy Chris Fedor breaking news earlier, right? Like there was obviously Woj and Shams and them broke the news on Isaac Okoro, but then Chris was doing behind the scenes reporting, even though he's supposedly on vacation, and found out and was the first person to mention that allegedly Isaac Okoro's $38 million contract also has $33 million guaranteed. And like, I'm trying to keep up with that because I'm the one writing the article and like scrambling while at this restaurant. And I see that post and I'm like, all right, sources told cleveland.com after I check and clear it with Chris on the side. Like, bro, it's this constantly flowing game that we're in, Jimmy. And like, as a columnist, like, well, I want to ask you this because I want the fans to also, your listeners to also get to know you. How did you get into being a columnist and a writer like you are right now so early into your journalist career?
Bum luck, buddy. I mean, a lot of it is just keeping on grinding, picking away. I mean, I covered preps high school stuff in Northwest Ohio for about 18 months. My first full-time job. I had interned at the Athletic. I interned with the Browns, like in their in-house media department. But like preps Northwest Ohio, preps in Kansas, covered Nebraska football and basketball for like 2 years, and then the funky rivalry beat, which is kind of still a part of my job description here at cleveland.com. Kind of not. I don't know. I live in a weird middle ground right now. And then right place, right time, right? Like Doug Lamoureux left. He was Ohio State beat writer / columnist. He would rip into the Browns when necessary. And our boss, Dave, asked me like, hey, you're around. Do you have strong opinions? Why don't we try this? It was like I don't know. It was kind of like a free trial run for like the first couple months of football season last year. And they were like, all right, let's stick with it. So I mean, there's really I don't know there's much of a story there other than like, if you want to do this stuff, you just got to keep doing it, right? You have to keep doing it. You have to work hard to get better. You have to seek the right feedback. You have to improve. But mostly it's just keep waking up and keep asking questions.
Yeah, I mean, I just think everybody has an opinion, right? But you got to have like information behind it. You got to have value, and you got to have people that actually care about your opinion enough to the point that you get feedback from, as Jimmy does all the time, from our readers and listeners via email, good, bad, and ugly, right?
Bro, this Baker Mayfield column I wrote last week
Oh man,
broke my email. I've never gotten so many emails in my life. It's crazy.
All right, so I wanted to do some cleaning up of the stuff that we were talking about because we do want this to be informative and insightful, right? So Shams is reportedly left stadium after working at the outlet for the past 6 years, and his contracts with the Athletic and FanDuel TV are coming up soon. So like they're about to expire. They might resign, they might not. Chris Haynes, on the other hand, left TNT Sports after 5 years as the network was fighting the NBA rights as well. He also was at Bleacher Report. It was reported that he left there also because his contract was also expiring. So these, like I said earlier, that the contracts ended, they're expiring or they had expired. These guys like are on the verge of free agency. That's basically what we would call it, right, in the sports world. And it's a toss-up. Does ESPN want to go with Shams, who clearly has the many of the same contacts as Woj, or Chris Haynes, who he's obviously already an NBA senior insider, but like, does he still have the same pull as those kind of guys, or is he still like on the up and up? I don't know. I think it's definitely a hard pick. It's just definitely difficult to think about where they might go and where they might choose.
All right. I think we're getting perhaps a bit too far in the media weeds here. I will say this though. I think I said earlier that like ESPN opens up your list of contacts, and you were right to say, Ethan, that everyone we're talking about here probably already has unlimited context. Here's what I should have said, which is with Woj gone, there is a huge vacuum to be filled in the phones of GMs, right? So it's kind of generally understood that Shams is kind of in closer with like players and their agents. Woj was in closer with the general managers, front office types. Who are these front office types talking to now? They need somebody. They need someone to gossip to. They need someone to leak sensitive information about their coaches to preserve their own jobs. It's not my fault. It's the coach's fault. Someone needs to carry that. So whoever is filling this Woj role is going to be opening new doors just by virtue of Woj being gone, right? Because Woj had this thing so much on lock. That competition is gone now. Now you still have to deal with Shams. I think it's Shams. You still have to deal with Shams, who is either beating Woj on a lot of these stories or a second behind him. So that's a lot. But you do there is opportunity. There is previously unmined sources or lesser mined sources. Like Woj had some. I think Woj had some of these people like, you will only talk to me. Now that he's gone, they got to talk to somebody else.
I mean, you remember the situation with LeBron James and Brian Windhorst. Like, I will only talk to Brian Windhorst. What are you naming your kid? Brian Windhorst. Like, that was how crazy that situation was. I remember reading that story. I was like, man, that is insane. But, I mean, so based on what you're saying, Jimmy, and if it's true about Woj being more tapped in with the league people and GMs and those higher ups, and then Shams being more so with the players and their agents, which I don't know how, like, because obviously ESPN and Woj, especially this past season, have been crediting agents more so. Anyway, I think it would make more sense for Chris Haynes to then move into the role of going back to the execs and all those things to fill that kind of void, because the contacts that Shams have aren't going anywhere. I just don't it's just very interesting to see the dynamic of this. Like, I'm just thinking about how crazy this season is gonna be, because now everybody's going to be looking at Shams and Chris Haynes if they already weren't, because one, like we said, those contracts are expiring, so we're trying to figure out where they're going to end up or if they're going to be the replacement for Woj, and two, how they're going to handle this season if they're not quote unquote writing or podcasting or on TV for certain publications, right? Like free agent journalism, like we talked about with Isaac Okoro, which I think is funny, betting on yourself and playing on the qualifying offer. So you still got, like Jimmy was talking about, like the range and people like listening and watching your stuff rather than just being on Twitter and maybe going on IG Live once or twice. I just think it's interesting how this is going to unfold, especially for the season.
Let's be clear. This is not a trend. This is not like journalists are not taking back the power. There are people like Woj, Shams, Chris Haynes, Mark Stein. They exist on a different plane. They bring one of a kind access to whatever outlet they stay with. As good as any of the rest of us think we are, we don't have that kind of negotiating power. The rest of us should just be happy to be employed and getting paid to do things that other people get paid to do. Other people pay to do.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy, talk about glad to be employed. I'm happy to be on this podcast talking to you, my guy. I'm not worried about going up the totem pole at all. That's more for Chris Fedor and them to worry about, right? Like guys that have been doing it for so long, trying to figure out where they want to take their career next and what they might want to be doing. I don't know. Like, who knows? At the end of the day, I feel like Chris Fedor, our guy Chris Fedor, is going to end up back on the radio just kicking it and doing what he had been doing 10 years before he got on the Cavs beat. Who knows, though, right?
Who knows? Who knows? We'll see what happens when he gets off the phone with ESPN and comes back to us, or
or not. No, hopefully Chris will be back for the next podcast next week. But we were supposed to talk about city jerseys and all that stuff, but we'll save that for another time. So, with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and subscribe to Subtext. This is where you can talk to us on a daily basis and get our insight and get information that might not go up on social media. But to get all this information, you can sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around, because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.